Hello everyone! It's been a while since I did one of these, so I'm going to fire one out to wrap up the year, last year, before much more time goes by. Since the last one of these videos I did, I've only read or completed 3 books. That's December for you, but according to my list, I read 63 books in 2020, and I think that's pretty good, so I'm not going to whine about, only reading 3 books in December, because that's kind of ridiculous. One of the books I did read is Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. It's number 20 in the Discworld series and number 4 in the Death sub-series. Not that it matters a whole lot, I have never made any attempt to read the Discworld books in order. Hogfather is the famous Christmas entry, where the Hogfather, who is essentially the Discworld equivalent to Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Saint Nick, disappears, and Death fills in for him for Hogswatch, assuming the costume and the ho-ho-hos and the whole shebang. Meanwhile, Death's granddaughter Susan goes on a mission to figure out why this is happening and where the real Hogfather has gone. They made a movie of this book starring Michelle Dockery as Susan and the late Ian Richardson as Death. I haven't seen it, but that is how I first heard about this book because it came out around the time that I was first discovering the Discworld books. I've tried for years to read Hogfather in December as it seemed appropriate, but my timing has always been off, so I kept saying, okay, try again next year. Not that it's imperative that you read it in December, but it seemed like the thing to do. Finally, in 2020, I got my act together. I planned far enough ahead to get it done, to get the book ordered 2 weeks in advance of when I would want to read it, so that it would be here, and then I could read it, you know. Anyway, I finally got to read Hogfather, and I liked it. I enjoyed it the way I almost always enjoy a Discworld novel. There is hilarity and confusion, quirky characters, some new, some old, familiar, I should say, climactic events that get a little hard to follow. There's always a point in these books where I feel like I'm not 100% sure what's going on. I'm enjoying it, but my head is about to explode. Death is a very well-loved Discworld character, and of course, those were the best parts. Death's bizarre but well-meaning attempts to play Santa Claus. The Mall Santa sequence was my favorite, without question. The Wizards of Unseen University become heavily involved in the story too, and they're always zany. Some of the philosophy that came into it was a prominent theme is science versus religion or faith, which in hindsight isn't unexpected given the subject matter, but it wasn't something I was looking for, so there's that, but it was a fun, diverting read nonetheless, and I got a big kick out of it. The second thing, which I'm going to count because it was the full text, was The Birds by Daphne du Maurier, the novella which the 1963 Hitchcock film was based on. I had read The Birds before, all the way back in 2017. I hadn't realized it was that long ago. I thought it was 2019. But it was different this time because someone else read it to me. It was recommended here that I check out Edward French's reading of The Birds on YouTube. Now, I am not an audiobook fan. I often get restless when someone reads to me because I would much rather just read for myself. And even when I'm doing a mundane, mindless task that should allow me to give the audiobook my full, undivided attention, I suddenly realize that I have stopped listening and then I have to go back a few minutes or a whole chapter or something, and I find that annoying. So I put off checking this out for a while until the right opportunity came along, and that opportunity happened to be when I was decorating our Christmas tree. I know that's unusual. You listen to the birds while you were decorating your Christmas tree. I know, but here's the thing. I love the way our tree looks, and I love our ornaments, but I do not love putting them on. Nothing wants to hang right on these skinny, stubby branches we've got, and I end up moving each ornament at least twice to find the right spot, and it drives me crazy. So as a means of distracting myself from the task at hand, I put on my headphones and listen to this audio recording, which is about a little over an hour long, split into 5 parts. Edward French, as it happens, is an award-winning film and television makeup artist. He is probably most known for his Academy Award-nominated work on Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. Nowadays, in his downtime, he's recording himself reading creepy novellas, short stories, and poems on YouTube, and it's a brilliant idea because he's got an ideal voice for it. The Birds itself is a great story. The atmosphere is heavy with foreboding, and while the narration is quiet and far from sensational, the content is disturbing in its subtle apocalyptic implications. French's reading brings all that out to the forefront. There were a couple times I got chills. This whole thing made decorating the tree much less frustrating than it has been in other years. So I recommend both the story and his reading of it, which you can listen to at, I'll put the link in the description. If I remember to, I'll put the link up in the corner. Although, does anybody like those? I've listened to a couple other readings he's done and look forward to checking out more, provided I can find the right time to do it. And lastly, we have the first book I finished in 2021, Ib Melchior, Man of Imagination by Robert Skotak. Ib Melchior was, among other things, a writer and director who was heavily involved in the science fiction scene in the 50s and 60s. His works include The Angry Red Planet, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, Reptilicus, Death Race 2000, and The Time Travelers. Some of you may recall that I saw The Time Travelers last year, and I really liked it. I think it was one of the most memorable films I saw last year, thanks largely to its startling conclusion and its special effects. Coming up with creative ways to make special effects work on a modest to low budget is something Melchior excelled at, and he also emphasized the science in his stories and scripts, keeping them as grounded in reality as possible, even when the main plots were fantastic. Author Robert Skotak is uniquely suited to write about Melchior and his work. Not only is he very familiar with the world of special and visual effects, having earned awards with his brother Dennis for work on some prominent science fiction films, but as he explains in the introduction, he grew up a fan of Melchior's films and later contacted him and eventually became a protege and a friend. He has nothing but good things to say about Melchior, who he describes as a sweet, positive person. The book covers a lot of ground. Films and television series that Melchior worked on are covered in detail, development of the stories, casting, design of the sets and the special effects, and post-production adjustments, but it doesn't feel bloated with tangents or unnecessary details. Skotak doesn't name drop, and he doesn't show off how much research he did, and he doesn't insert himself into the narrative. The focus stays on Melchior and the projects he worked on. I've come to have a better opinion in the last few years, maybe because of all those Godzilla movies, of how creative some lower-budget science fiction films are. Filmmakers often start off with much bigger ideas than they can afford to execute, but they don't let that stop them. They just find a way around the difficulties. Sometimes the end result is goofy or doesn't age well, but other times it comes out looking great and the audience has no idea how comically simple it was to achieve that effect. Or, conversely, how many hours of painstaking effort were put in to getting that 2-second shot. That's the magic of film. Science fiction films especially seem to require so much problem solving. Men like Melchior approach the obstacles with optimism and sincerity and this can-do attitude, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the respect with which his personal life is handled here. There is sufficient discussion of his early life growing up in Denmark, the son of a famous opera singer father, and of his experiences as a counterintelligence agent in World War II. But there's no sordid tell-all here. There is acknowledgement and discussion of some controversies that fall under the professional umbrella, but other than that, perhaps there isn't anything to tell. Melchior did go through a divorce, but Skotak doesn't talk about that in much detail, perhaps out of respect for his friend. I appreciated the absence of celebrity gossip. So many Hollywood biographies go into way more detail than I ever wanted to know, but this book focuses on the path that got Melchior into filmmaking and how the films came together. This book includes a lot of photographs and examples of concept art, and it's loaded with quotations from people involved with these movies and from Melchior himself, who was still alive at the time this book was published in 2000. It's a good read for fans of science fiction classics, especially if you're particularly interested in special effects work. And if you're familiar with these movies, that's even better. I have seen just a couple of the films expanded on here, The Angry Red Planet and The Time Travelers, so those chapters were of special interest to me. If I watch other films Melchior worked on, and I plan to, I'll go back and revisit the chapters about them. I also learned toward the end of the book that later in his career, Melchior wrote over a dozen World War II books. One is an autobiography of his time as a counterintelligence agent, and the rest are novels. These would probably be classified as thrillers, but like his screenplays, they have their roots in fact and reality. Some of them are based on his own experiences, and they sound very interesting. So those are my thoughts on a couple books I've read lately. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I encourage you to check these out if they sound interesting to you. I've got a lot of books I want to read and reread and review in the coming year, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.